The VA just majorly expanded the PAC Act. Last week, the VA announced that it was adding to the list of cancers that are presumptively service-connected to burn pit exposure. Join us in this video as we go over the new presumptive cancers under the PAC Act. My name is Greg. I'm an attorney and an Air Force veteran.
My name is Victoria. Thanks for joining us today. Like Greg said, these new presumptive conditions can make it easier for Gulf War and post 9/11 veterans to access benefits in healthcare. So let's dive in. Tell us about the new conditions that have been added to the list of presumptive conditions.
All right. So I pulled up here an announcement that was made last week about the new presumptive conditions. And you'll see here in the first paragraph that the VA announced that it is making these cancers presumptive for service connection. So you have leukemias, multiple myelomas, myelodysplastic syndromes, myelofibrosis, urinary bladder, urethra, and related genitourinary cancers presumptive if you've had a toxic exposure, such as burn pits.
All right. So that's awesome news. Obviously, adding to that list is helpful for veterans. Can you explain, though, for those that don't know, what does presumptive mean?
A presumptive disability is a disability that VA presumes was caused by service just based on where you were served and what you were exposed to. And so, as most people know, the PAC Act made it presumptive that if you had service in any of these locations, you were exposed to certain toxic chemicals, primarily from burn pits and other contaminants in these areas. And so if you had service in one of these areas and then you develop one of the presumptive disabilities, like the new cancers that we just mentioned, then you're automatically service connected for those cancers.
Okay. So typically you have this chronic illness or disease or disability, and you have to prove that it's connected to your time in the service. And this eliminates that element.
Right. This eliminates the requirement for a nexus opinion. So like you said, typically you have to prove that your disability was caused by something, and a doctor has to say it's at least as likely as not that urinary bladder cancer was due to this exposure. And so presumptions eliminate that requirement for a nexus. VA has already determined that if you were exposed to one of these toxins, that exposure caused this cancer.
Okay. And not every veteran that has these illnesses is going to be eligible for this benefit. Who is eligible?
Well, the list is here. These new cancers are presumptively service connected if you had service in these areas in the appropriate time. So that the first section is Gulf War veterans. So that's veterans who served from August 2nd, 1990 forward. And then you have to have a service in these locations. So Somalia or Southwest Asia Theater of Operations. And that includes Iraq, Kuwait, pretty much the whole Gulf. The second category is our post 9/11 veterans like myself. And so that includes anyone who served after 9/11 in Afghanistan, Iraq, Djibouti, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and so on. And then notably, they're also including K2 now, Karshi Kanabad, which was a base in Uzbekistan, which I've been to, that is heavily contaminated with chemicals and also radiation. It's a really bad place. So again, if you had service in any of these locations during these times, then you qualify for the presumption. And if you develop one of these cancers, which God forbid you don't, then you automatically get it service connected. And a lot of people get confused. This new presumption does not apply to Vietnam veterans. This is not presumptive to Agent Orange exposure. This is for basically burn pit veterans.
These changes, have they already gone into effect, or are they potentially subject to the new executive regulatory freeze?
Yeah, so you can see here, this explains the effective dates. I don't know why they did this, but they split it up. There's 2 dates. So, these first cancers went into effect January 2nd of this year, 2025. And then these other cancers are effective January 10th, 2025.
So the PAC Act was passed in 2022. Why are they still making changes to it?
Well, part of the PAC Act required VA to continue to identify new potentially presumptive conditions. And so VA has an ongoing obligation to do studies to determine if, these toxic exposures in these locations could potentially cause other types of cancer. And if there's strong scientific support for, these toxins causing other cancers, and VA is obligated to make them presumptive. The PACT Act is continually evolving and getting more and more broad. I expect in the future they're going to add even more cancers. The stuff that we were exposed to causes cancer. And so this list is probably going to continue to grow.
Okay. How does this impact veterans who have had claims that were denied in the past? I mean, the PAC Act being passed in 2022, not including these. What if someone applied in 23? What happens?
They need to reapply. So if you've been previously denied for one of these cancers, you can now win that claim. So you have to file a supplemental claim to reopen it. And your new evidence, would basically be this. You could just submit this saying, hey, this is now a presumptive cancer. I served in this area, and it should be pretty much an automatic grant. VA will verify that you were diagnosed with this cancer. They'll verify that you had the required service in the area, and then they should be issuing a rating decision granting service connection.
And are they getting it dated back to when they originally applied and were denied?
No, you're going to get it dated back to when you reopen it. If you file it within a year of these effective dates, it should go back to these effective dates. If you currently have a claim in progress, so let's say you made a claim for one of these cancers, August of 2024, before they were presumptive, what's generally going to happen is VA is going to grant the claim, but they're only going to give you an effective date back to one of these two dates. But you could still argue and win service connection before the presumptive effective date because your claim started back in August before it. But to win that period before it was presumptive, you're going to have to prove the nexus, meaning that a doctor is going to have to say it's at least as likely as not that your cancer is due to this toxic exposure. But that should be relatively straightforward. There's certainly private examiners who can write those opinions. And I say straightforward because VA is conceding that, yes, these toxic exposures cause these cancers. And so, a private examiner can write you a medical opinion using the same studies that VA used to make these presumptive. If you get a grant and you started your claim before this date and the grant only goes back to this date, you should know that you want to appeal to get it granted for the entire claim period.
And I'm going to ask, just because I know other people are going to comment this in the comment section or call us to let us know, why doesn't the Nehmer case apply in this situation?
So the answer is the Nehmer case is a provision for Agent Orange presumptions. And so it does not apply to Gulf War PAC Act presumptions. The Nehmer case was a case back in 1989, and it applied to the Agent Orange Act. It basically said that if you made a claim for an Agent Orange disability and it was denied, and then later on VA made that disability or presumptive Agent Orange condition, and you reapplied and you were granted service connection, you could get an effective date back to when you made your first claim. Unfortunately, that does not apply in the context of the PAC Act.
The Nehmer case is not just a general blanket, you can always get it back if it's later a presumptive condition. It is strictly regarding Agent Orange cases.
Correct.
Anything else you want to share with folks before we sign off?
Nope. I'm happy to see the PAC Act continue to play out and VA to comply with the law and continually add new presumptive conditions. And so, if you've been denied for one of these cancers in the past, you should definitely reapply. And, again, God forbid you come down with one of these cancers in the future, get your application in as soon as possible.
Well, thanks for the breakdown and thanks for joining us on today's video. If you find this helpful or enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. It really helps push our videos out to other veterans. We appreciate your support.
Appreciate it. See you guys next time.